We're back at the Michael Koolidge Show. Our next guest is Executive Director of America Rising. Welcome on to the Michael Koolidge Show, Alex Smith.
Thanks so much for having me.
Do you go by Alex or Alexandra?
Your choice.
I'll call you Alex if that's okay, although I always associate Alex Smith with that former quarterback, the guy who came before Colin Kaepernick on the 49ers, and I'm sure you get that all the time.
I do. Whenever there's like a big play on during a game, or there's some news about a trade, my Twitter feed blows up with people who think it might be me.
Yeah. I think he had a pretty decent season last year, but I know that probably gets old with you. But you have been chairwoman of the College Republican National Committee. I'm a former College Republican. That's a great organization. And I know you've been involved with a bunch of other things. And you have been part of this America Rising now. And America Rising is wholeheartedly against the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. And you're protesting against that. And you want that whole thing to be defeated, correct?
Fake news. We are wholeheartedly in support of Judge Kavanaugh's confirmation. He is an incredible jurist, and I think what is, great about the selection process is that we had sort of an embarrassment of riches, if you will, for people who care about originalism and interpreting the law as it is, not how we think it should be for public policy reasons. We had a whole list of contenders that were great in terms of being faithful to the Constitution, and among them was Judge Kavanaugh. The president made his choice. We could not be more thrilled, and I think that he's clearly going around. He's impressing a lot of the senators, and we're extremely proud to be supporting him.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you go back to a lot of these other, and I'm just a tad older than you, a decade or so, I think, maybe a little more than that. But I've seen a handful of more of these Senate confirmation processes than you have, only because I'm older. And every time a name comes up, I hope, and I think a lot of people expect that person to be like elite of elite as far as a legal mind goes. I mean, this is the Supreme Court of the United States. You can be on the Supreme Court for 30, 40, 50 years. You want the smartest brains in the United States, smartest legal brains in the United States sitting on it, deciding whether something is constitutional or not. You don't want an activist. You don't want someone who can't keep up with the discussions going on. And all indications are that Brett Kavanaugh is that sort of guy. I mean, Yale law grad, and not just a Yale law grad, but the kind of guy at Yale Law and at the different courts that he has presided over in Washington, D.C. and other places, as a thought leader, as a guy who, like, Antonin Scalia before him and others, people were like, wow, what does this guy think? Let's read his briefing. So this guy's eminently qualified and liked by people in the legal establishment, right?
Yeah, I mean, he has just an absolutely incredible pedigree. Not to mention, what I think was really great about the ceremony where President Trump revealed his pick was that we got to hear a little bit of the human side of Judge Kavanaugh as well. We got to hear about his daughters. We got to hear about his coaching,
Yes.
about his community service, which I think, really paints a picture of someone who isn't just sort of in the ivory tower, but someone who also talks with everyday Americans and understands sort of, the real world. So, he's from the D.C. Circuit, which is a huge feeder court into the Supreme Court. So they see a lot of these big constitutional questions before they actually reach the Supreme Court. Many, many times, Judge Kavanaugh's opinions were used by Supreme Court justices in their ultimate decision-making process to come to whatever decision they made. So he has an incredible mind, and I think that he's just going to be such a terrific addition to the conservatives that are already on the court.
I love the story he told about how his mom put herself through law school and then became a judge, and him as a teenager or however old he was having these, discussions and debates with his mom and conversations with his mom. And I think his dad was a lawyer too, about really important issues of the day. So, I mean, this guy has been living and breathing the law literally his entire life, it sounds like. So he's eminently qualified. We know that. Now, the Democrats, of course, because this is America and this is the age of rage, are doing everything they can to stop this great man who was nominated by duly elected President Donald Trump to be the next Supreme Court justice. Tell our listeners what they're trying to do here to make this not happen. They're not questioning his thoughts on anything. They're not questioning even his decisions about things. Tell our listeners what they're doing to try to stop his nomination.
Well, so they're, in terms of their opposition that they're articulating to the media about Judge Kavanaugh and his credentials, it's really sort of vague and incomprehensible. And the reason for that is that liberals don't have a corresponding, judicial sort of, like a judicial temperament, if you will, or, a jurisprudence like conservatives do. If you're a conservative, you support jurists who are faithful to the Constitution and for people who interpret the laws as written. If you're a liberal, you view the court as just like another legislator, just another opportunity to affect a public policy that you couldn't get through the legislator, at the court level. Which, right. Of course, is totally, is totally absurd. It totally goes against, our three branches and our system of government here. So their opposition to Judge Kavanaugh is not very clear. In terms of now the tactics that they're using to try to stall this nomination, they're trying to pick a fight over documents.
Yes.
And so we know that Judge Kavanaugh served as staff secretary to President Bush for a period of time. This is a role in the White House where you bring the papers to the president. You are sometimes involved in policy discussions, but most of the times, you're bringing papers, from one person to another person and putting it on the president's desk. It's a very prestigious position, but it's not one that involves constant input about your opinion.
You're quite literally a paper pusher.
I mean, yes. To the extent that Judge Kavanaugh was involved in policy discussions, of course, I think that we all have, we all have the right to see those documents, to see how he might rule on things, and it's understandable that senators might, want those documents. But what the Democrats are doing is they're saying we need to see all of the documents, like every single paper that passed through President Bush's desk for his 8 years in office, and many, many of those papers have absolutely nothing to do with Judge Kavanaugh. They don't reflect how he might rule in any given situation, or give us any window into his mind, or give the senators any sort of decision making information that they'll need in this process. It's just a way for not only Dianne Feinstein to appease the progressives in her state who are coming after her, but also for the Democrats to try to stall this nomination. So
right.
That's where things currently stand right now.
That's the big tactic you said, and this isn't completely unprecedented. And I was reading a piece by Lester Munson in The Hill, a George Mason Scalia Law School staff director, who said, Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kagan had over 150,000 documents produced for review. For Judge Kavanaugh, this could potentially exceed 1 million documents, the most ever for a Supreme Court nominee. To me, if I were Mitch McConnell, I would simply say, okay, go ahead. You guys look at all those documents, and you have until August 20th. Every fellow senator, you have until August 20th to read them. Go ahead, make them 3 million documents. You burn that midnight oil. Go ahead and pour over them, but the mark on the wall is August 20th, or the mark on the wall is August 31st, or whatever.
Sure.
There's no reason why he can't put a date on the calendar and say, have all your ducks in a row, each fellow senator by then, and then we're going to start this confirmation process.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that this is just another stall tactic on the Democrats' part, and what the Democrats, I think are being short-sighted about is not only, trying to stall someone who's eminently qualified for the high court here, but also they're sort of doing so at their own political peril in their respective states. We know that in 2016 that the Supreme Court was a huge issue for voters. About 20% of voters said that was their top issue when they were coming out of the voting booth. So we know that it was a big reason why people voted in 2016. And of those voters, a huge swath of them broke for Trump. And that includes places like these 10 states where we have Democratic senators running in places that the president won in 2016. So, for Claire McCaskill and Bill Nelson, it might be okay in D.C. to be sipping champagne with Chuck Schumer and talking about how they're going to stall this nomination for Judge Kavanaugh. But going back home to Florida, going back home to Missouri, it's going to be really hard for them to explain to voters who very much want this confirmation process to happen for Judge Kavanaugh. They want it to happen before the midterm elections. They're going to pay a political price if they don't listen to their voters.
Last question for Alex Smith from America Rising. You, as a student of both politics and of the law, you actually have a law degree and studied at Seton Hall University. The worst case scenario here, let's say that this tactic actually works for the document thing and it's delayed, or Mitch McConnell starts counting the votes, and Murkowski and Collins and maybe even McCain, and maybe Jeff Flake starts to get a little flaky, and all of a sudden he's like, well, shoot, we can't vote on this because we don't have a majority of the senators through. And then the election happens, and the Democrats pick up 2 seats, and it's 51 Democrats to 49 Republicans. What happens then? Not just with Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, the seat needs to be filled, obviously. Is it going to be him, or is Trump going to have to find someone who the Democrats can vote for? Like, what's going to happen then?
So I actually think I'm a little bit more optimistic about this, only because Senators Murkowski and Collins have already signaled, about the idea that they think he's qualified, and they have said things on the record that are positive. We also know that Senator Joe Manchin has said positive things. And don't
Democrat,
forget,
West Virginia.
Democrat, West Virginia. We had 3 Democrats break away in 2017 for Justice Gorsuch. So that was Senator Manchin. We had Senator Tester and Senator Heitkamp. These are all Democrats who are in the same political position, if not worse, right now. And look, I think as someone who is dedicated to defining and defeating Democrats since 2018, I genuinely hope that these Democrats do the right thing and support Judge Kavanaugh because he's tremendously qualified. And I think we could at least get those votes. And if we get those votes and we hold on to Collins and we hold on to Murkowski, which I don't see any reason why we wouldn't at this point, I think that we'll be in fine shape.
Yes, I share your optimism and hope that indeed occurs, and we see him sworn in as the next Supreme Court justice before this year is over, if not the very beginning of the next Supreme Court term. Alex Smith, anything from America Rising? Anything else you would like to add before we say goodbye? What else is America Rising working on? What other things are you guys interested in and trying to promote?
We're causing all kinds of trouble. So we're working in the 2018 elections, especially on the Senate and the House, trying to defend our majorities there. But we have already started looking into 2020. We are researching and tracking all of the candidates so far who said that they are running or who have expressed interest in running, senators like Elizabeth Warren, even to people like CEOs like Howard Schultz. We are fully invested in both 2018 and 2020. So we're thinking in the short term, but also in the long term as well.
Yes, I'm excited about Charlotte. You know, the Republican National Convention has already been announced that it's going to be in Charlotte in 2020, but no news yet on where the Democrats are doing it.
No news yet. I think that every decision that they're going to make is going to be sort of a divisive one and one of consequence, because they have such a leadership issue. So they just changed their rules about superdelegates, for example. Some of the progressives feel like it didn't go far enough. Some of the establishment folks are definitely worried about what happens when, you open up more of the voting to to the people, particularly with the Democratic Socialist sort of streak running through the Democratic Party right now. So
yes.
I think that, the Democrats have a lot of leadership problems.
Yes, they absolutely do, and that's one of the reasons that a lot of people call them Democrats, not Democratic, because people think that they're Democratic with lowercase d, and in so many ways they're not. This superdelegate thing from 2016 was totally corrupted by the and the collusion between Hillary Clinton and the head of the DNC at the time to fix that election in her favor. Hopefully, Democrats will not do that in 2020. But like you said, it's very possible that you're going to see some of these Democrat socialists bubbling up, and they're going to be even a more further left party.
One quick example on that is Tom Perez, the current DNC chair. He vowed when he took over after the disastrous 2016 cycle for Democrats that the Democratic National Committee would not get involved in primaries anymore. Basically to assuage the concerns of Bernie Sanders supporters who felt like Hillary Clinton, I think rightfully so, was pushed through by the Democratic Party elite. And, what does he do? Just, not too long ago, he goes and he endorses Andrew Cuomo over Cynthia Nixon in New York State running for governor, who declares herself to be Democratic Socialist. So he got a lot of heat over that. And I think it just demonstrates that their problems aren't going away anytime soon.
Alex Smith, America Rising. Thank you so much for coming onto the Michael Coolidge Show. You're welcome back anytime.
And thank you so much. Anytime.
We'll be right back.